So this unit, we're going to be taking a look at the culture and society of the classical era. We're going to begin our look at classical era culture with Judaism as one of the world's oldest religions. So our topic today is Judaism, and in terms of essential questions, we have two. We want to examine what makes Judaism unique. So we need to understand the religion itself and how it differs from other religions, but also we want to examine how Judaism might encourage either social and or political order. So that kind of goes to our compelling question of the unit. How might Judaism encourage social and or political order? So create your Cornell Notes template if you would, and follow along. So first off, an overview of classical culture just in general as compared to the previous era, as we were talking about the ancient era. This era is much more cosmopolitan, meaning worldly, interconnected, and much more complex, which this era, when we looked at ancient era religions, for the most part, they were pretty simplistic. If you remember, we talked about how the religions of the ancient era oftentimes had different gods and goddesses, and those gods and goddesses represented forces of nature, things that human beings couldn't necessarily explain at the time. But in the classical era, human beings are starting to understand science and math much more, and are coming to rational understanding of much of nature's forces. So those type of religions no longer fly in this era, are no longer accepted. And human beings begin to develop a more complex, or they begin to desire a more complex explanation or understanding of human existence. The religions and philosophies of the classical era are going to address factors like, why are we here? What is our purpose in life? What is our role in the universe, in the world? And, these philosophies are striving to explain not just the purpose to life, but our role in society, how to create order in society. So that's what most of these philosophies are going to be doing or driving toward. So the first religion we'll look at is Judaism, and Judaism actually originated in the ancient era. So why are we looking at it in the classical era? Well, much of the Tanakh, which is what Christians would call the Old Testament, it includes the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim, were written in the classical era. So Judaism, in a sense, was codified in the classical era. The country of origin of Judaism is actually not Israel, although that's where it is predominantly practiced. Abraham, which is the father of the Jewish people, was living in Mesopotamia at the time, in the city of Ur. But Jews believe that the nation of Israel was given to them by God. That is their promised land. And so I should speak, although it's not listed under beliefs of Judaism, it's an important concept that Jews believe that they have a special covenant. And that was a vocab word last unit, or 2 units ago in the ancient era. A special covenant, a promise that they have between themselves and God. And essentially the tenets of the covenant are that the Jews would follow and worship only God, only one God, and that God would then protect and prosper his people. They would be his special chosen people, which is an important belief of the Jews, both that concept of monotheism, that they worship only one God, that establishes a tradition from which 2 other monotheistic religions come, that being Christianity, of course, and Islam. But also this notion that they are special and selected by God. And they also believe that part of this chosenness is that God has given them or granted them a special chosen homeland, which is the nation of Israel today. Jews have an early written law code known as the Ten Commandments. Jewish law is not in any way, shape, or form limited to the Ten Commandments. That is simply the earliest laws that were handed down. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of laws, including dietary laws, that exist in the Old Testament. But there is this notion that of good and evil, and that there are rewards for goodness and punishment for evil behavior. Not every religion has that, and so Jews believe that as long as you live a good and upright life, God will bless that and will prosper you and will reward you. But if you are evil or do bad things, then he will punish you. There's also this notion that a Messiah or a Savior is coming. I mentioned that importantly because that's what's going to separate Jews from Christians, which is that Christians believe that Jesus of Nazareth was that Messiah. And Jews, while they don't debate the existence of Jesus, he certainly existed, there's historical records left and right of that, they do not believe that he was the chosen Messiah. Some of the practices of Judaism, well, their holy book, as I mentioned, is called the Tanakh. It's made up of 3 different parts, the holiest of which is the Torah, which are the first 5 books of the Bible. And those are the books that's considered the holiest because those books were given by God to the Jews. Jews worship in a synagogue. Oftentimes religions have different places of worship and certainly different methods of worship. This is a community religion. It's not an individualistic religion. So it's important that Jews come together on a special holy day, which is Saturday for the Jews. There is a practice of male circumcision that really physically set the Jews apart from others at that time. Circumcision is, of course, a pretty common practice in the United States today, and certainly it's not restricted to Jews. It's generally done to male babies in American hospitals. In fact, you generally have to request it not be done. But circumcision was a physical sign, to be a physical sign of the covenant, the special covenant that they had with God. Jews do practice sort of a coming of age. Male young men have a party called a bar mitzvah. Girls have a bat mitzvah, and it's not unlike the quinceañera that Hispanic girls experience. It's sort of this coming to adulthood. They are then, at the age of 13, actually for the bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah, are considered adults, religiously speaking, adults in temple, in the synagogue. Jews also have a number of dietary restrictions, more so if you are kosher, if you are Orthodox Jew, very strict in terms of your religion. Not only do they eat kosher, Orthodox Jews will not mix meat products and milk products. They are not allowed to do that. In fact, many Orthodox Jews have separate sets of plates so that, milk products and meat products will never ever touch the same plate. So you would never see an Orthodox Jew having a cheeseburger, for example. There is also the restriction against eating any kind of pork. And even if you're not a conservative or an Orthodox Jew, even if you're, a more Reformed Jew, then they generally do observe that particular practice. They don't eat bacon or ham or anything like that. Okay, so copy this question and then jot down some of your thoughts. I want you to think back about some of the things that were discussed and written down, and how do you believe that Judaism might encourage social and or political control? When you're done jotting your thoughts down, then go back and interact with those notes, starring, circling, underlining, highlighting important key concepts and key vocabulary words that you think will show up later, or concepts that will show up on the test.